First at 11 tonight, Amanda Knox breaks her silence and professes her innocence. But do you believe she told Diane Sawyer the truth? Knox's exclusive interview airs on the same day her memoir is released on the legal nightmare following the death of her roommate.
Meredith Kircher was killed in 2007. An Italian court convicted Knox and her then boyfriend back in 2009. And then 2 years ago, her conviction was overturned. But earlier this year, Italy's highest court called for a new trial. But tonight, we spoke with a legal expert who says that Knox should not have spoken with Sawyer at all. Autria Godfrey live in our newsroom to explain why. Autria.
Leon, in this first interview, Amanda Knox talks about the signed confession that she gave Italian authorities. She talks about how she was scared and how they were screaming at her in Italian that she didn't yet understand, claiming that they were going to take her to jail. She says that she was vulnerable and that her words were twisted into that confession. But one legal analyst says that her case goes back before a judge, tonight's interview and this new book could be used in the exact same way. Amanda Knox is not holding back. Her first television interview, Knox says what she endured in Italy was surreal.
So I heard that it must be Meredith, there was a body, and that there was an armoire.
Her life shattered, she says, from the prison officials who she says tricked her into telling how many sexual partners she'd had, to the media that took that and turned it into tabloid fodder.
I thought that's what all self-confident, free-spirited women did.
The young American studying abroad, dubbed Foxy Knoxy, says she was anything but, and after an acquittal by an Italian court, she's back to facing the same murder charge. So should she even be talking?
You do not want your clients speaking to the media under any circumstances.
Criminal defense attorney Richard Vinci says the simple conversation with Diane Sawyer can turn up in court as a confession.
Anything she says, and maybe she says things now years later that are contradictory to what she said earlier. I mean, there are so many different ways that you could damage your case in speaking to the press.
But Knox is done waiting to be heard, as the cover of her book declares. And even that, Vinci says, could come back to haunt her.
You can pretty safely infer that she was careful in what she wrote in her book and paid attention to the words in it, and it says what she means for it to say. Will there ever be any question that what's in that book is not what she meant to say? I doubt it.
And Knox's attorney says that her new trial is likely to begin in Florence next year. But that legal analyst that we spoke with says that despite the fact that the U.S. does have an extradition agreement with Italy, because you cannot be tried in the U.S. for the same crime twice, he says that will likely be Knox's biggest defense to keep from going back to Italy. Live in the newsroom, Autria Godfrey, ABC 7 News.
All right, thank you, Autria. Now, the cloud of questions over what happened the night Meredith Kircher died remains front and center for many who have followed this case for the last 6 years. Tonight, we asked what you thought about Amanda Knox and what she told Diane Sawyer.
The Italian government might want to just let it go at this point. She was found not guilty. Maybe, it seems like it's a lot of money being spent on a trial that seems to have been resolved earlier.
Maybe it's a good thing that the court has reopened it, because they will, if now he and her boyfriend, I assume, are both being called back. So if they're now acquitted, there will be absolutely no doubt about their innocence.
Within the past hour, we also posed the same question on our WJLA Facebook page. As many of you watch from home, here now are a few comments. Betty writes, "No, she is guilty. If I was on the jury, I would vote guilty." And Nancy shares this: "There is no reason not to believe her." Now, it's important to note that since returning to Seattle in 2011, Knox has largely avoided the public spotlight. She's been studying at the University of Washington.